So today we're going to start with a meditation, and then after that I'm going to show a short 10-minute TED Talk from Glasgow. So for the meditation part, I'd like to start as always by asking folks to let go of where they were before they got here, trying to settle into the room, into the space where you are at this moment. And help facilitate that, we'll do a grounding practice. I'm going to do the one where we slowly scan the space to the right and to the left, taking in what we see with our eyes, maybe labeling what we're seeing, the colors, shapes, textures. And you want to try and keep your eyes in line with your head as you're scanning. A lot of us, me included, our eyes get ahead of the head, so try and keep them in the same direction. And you can look up, straight across, down, whatever you're comfortable with. We'll start slowly scanning the room to the right, saying to yourself maybe the colors, the shapes, textures. You can tell that with the eyes. And you may notice a breath in as the body's relaxing doing this, or the shoulders dropping a little. And if you don't, not judging yourself. And coming back to center. And now going off to the left side. Scanning the room, seeing what's in front of you. Letting your eyes drink that in. And coming back to center. And for those of you who haven't heard me mention this before, the grounding practice helps calm the central nervous system as well. Identifying what's around us, hopefully identifying that it's a safe space to be in so that your body can calm down. We may have also been running, had a different meeting, something else going on beforehand, so that can help us drop into the body, into the here and now. Okay. As I mentioned, we're going to start with a meditation, and then it's going to lead into a contemplation. For those of you who haven't done a meditation with contemplation before, it's asking a question over and over repeatedly and seeing what comes up for you. So I'll just mention this before we start. When I ask the question first off, you may have an initial response. And then as I go on asking you to repeat the question, you may have a different response. And noticing what that response is, and noticing if you have any thoughts or emotions about what's coming up or any sensations in the body. So being aware of that contemplation throughout your whole being as we're doing the meditation. And again, I'll guide us when we get there, but I just wanted to give people a heads up. Even though we're mindfulness in the moment, I wanted to give you a little head start there. Okay, so coming into the body, coming into the present moment, you may feel comfortable enough to close your eyes. It's completely up to you in the space that you're in. You may want to keep your eyes open, and then you can have a soft gaze in front of you, trying to relax the eyes. Don't have to stare intently at what's in front of you, just having a soft, blurry gaze if you do have the eyes open. And coming into the body, noticing the feet where they are, how they're touching the earth or your socks or your shoes. Maybe wiggling the toes a little bit if it's hard to identify the feet. letting them rest in space. And slowly scanning up the body, the shins and the calves, knees, thighs and quads. And the buttocks, maybe you're sitting in a chair, sensing into the chair. Up the back, and the torso, and shoulders. Noticing if the ankles are under the knees and if the shoulders are over the hips. Generally, this is a good position, allowing the bones to hold us upright versus the muscles. But every individual body is different. So keeping in mind your body and finding a position that's comfortable, yet alert. And if you are feeling sleepy, maybe having the eyes open is better for you. Noticing where the hands are. How are you holding your fingers? Are they relaxed and open? Some of us may have a tendency to clench them in fists. Seeing if we can relax the fingers. Drape the shoulders down the body. Maybe having the ears in line above the shoulders, and maybe a slight tuck of the chin. Now bringing the awareness to the breath. The breath and how it feels to breathe in the body. Maybe you notice the breath at the tip of the nose and the nostrils as the air is moving in and out of the body. Maybe the chest as the lungs and ribs are expanding. Maybe noticing that expansion in the front of the body and the back of the body and the sides of the body. Are we freely able to breathe and let the rib cage expand and contract all around the torso? Maybe the breath is in the belly. And we can feel our abdomen expanding and contracting. We can tend to contract our stomach muscles, seeing if we can let them relax while still holding our structure. Don't want to be collapsing or anything. Keeping the structure of the body alert and awake, but yet allowing the belly to expand and contract. going to continue to focus on the breath for a little bit, picking a focal point of the breath, which is most prominent for you, easiest for you to focus on. No need to give yourself a challenge and pick the hardest. Pick which comes most easily for you, focusing on the belly, the chest, or the nostrils. And trying to keep the awareness on that focal point of the breath. And if the mind wanders, judging yourself, critiquing yourself, thinking of something else, once you notice that, you're being aware, and then you can bring yourself back to the breath. Now for the contemplation, asking you to consider what matters most. What matters most to me? I'm not fighting over answers that come up, just going with the first one and focusing on that for a bit. Sensing that answer and how it feels in your body. Maybe it was something you were expecting, maybe it wasn't. I'm asking again, what matters most to me? Maybe it's the same answer, maybe it's different. Feeling that answer in the body, how is it resonating with you? In your mind, in your heart? I'm asking a third time, what matters most to me? Now letting go of the contemplation and returning to the breath, focusing on the breath in the body, maybe noticing if there was a difference between how the breath is in the body now after the contemplation than before. Again, this is inquisitive, just asking, investigating, not judging or having a story around if there was a difference. Just noticing. Now we're going to end the meditation, slowly coming back into the room, maybe wiggling the fingers and wiggling the toes. And if you had your eyes closed, Slowly opening them. And as I mentioned, I wanted to share a video with everyone today. I'll close some of these things here. So this is a TED Talk from Glasgow. Jason Leitch, my Scottish friend, told me how to pronounce his last name. So he did a TED Talk on what matters to me. And it's about a nurse who implemented this sort of program, if you will, in a pediatrics unit in Scotland, and then how it sort of grew from there. So I'm going to play this now. And he does have a Scottish accent, so there are some things that may be hard to hear. The first time I listened to this TED Talk, I wasn't able to see it, I was just listening. So I just want to let you know, he's going to say in the beginning respiratory rate. He pronounces it a little differently, so that's what he's saying, respiratory. And then a little while later, he's going to be talking about fuchsias, the flowers. So those were a couple things that I had a hard time figuring out with the accent. So here we go.
So I'm going to teach you all to be healthcare professionals. I want you to take your left hand, it's interactive. You're going to take the layer of knuckles that are halfway along your hand and place it in the middle of your throat. Then you're going to turn the fingers into the groove of your throat, and you're going to feel your heart rate, your pulse in your neck. You're going to count it for 6 seconds, and there's going to be a timer on the big screen. So starting now. Stop. So you now have a number, multiply it by 10. That gives you your heart rate. So some of you will have a 70 or an 80 or a 90. Some of the fit ones amongst you might have a 40 or a 50. Now you're going to do your respiratory rate. Take your left hand again, place it on your chest. You're going to count the number of times you breathe in 15 seconds. Starting now. Stop. Multiply that number by 4. You now have your respiratory rate. You're almost a nurse and a doctor. So you now have your own heart rate, your own respiratory rate. You might have a 16, a 20, a 24. You might have a 12. Don't worry if you've got an 8. You're just a bit tired. Vital signs. What we do for you when you come into a hospital, we take your vital signs. We take your heart rate, your respiratory rate. We also do your blood pressure, your temperature, but we thought they might be a little advanced for us to do in a big room like this. I want to talk to you about a new vital sign. A vital sign about compassion, about care. And that vital sign is called what matters to you. I'm going to do that by telling you about Don. Don is in his 70s, and he collapsed at home in Kilmarnock, not far from here on the west coast of Scotland. And he had a life-threatening heart rhythm problem. So he gets admitted to the local hospital, and Victor, his cardiologist, decides with him that he requires a defibrillator inserted into his heart. And that defibrillator will, for the rest of his life, shock his heart back into the correct rhythm, and he'll live a happy and long life. Unfortunately, there's a little bit of a delay for Victor to arrange that defibrillator procedure, and Don decides he wants to leave. So he tries to sign himself out of hospital, and Victor is called, and he goes to see Don. And he sits beside him, and he has a what matters to you conversation. And it turns out that what mattered to Don were his fuchsias. Now, Victor didn't know what a fuchsia was. So he spent some time getting to know Don and hearing from Don about how important his fuchsias were. They were his life. They were what he did. He pruned them, and he watered them, and he looked after them, and he entered competitions with them. They were more important to Don than life itself. So Victor, being slightly more imaginative, thought, let's try and bring the fuchsias to Don, rather than Don to the fuchsias. So that's exactly what he did. They got a van with the pots of Dawn's fuchsias and they brought them to the hospital. And Dawn could go trim, prune, water the fuchsias in the car park of the hospital. They inserted his defibrillator, he did well, he was discharged and went back. You see the difference between the heart rate measurement, the respiratory rate measurement, and the what matters to you. So we have started to spread this around Scotland's hospitals. Jennifer Rodgers, who was Nurse of the Year in 2014 in the National Health Service year, started this work in children's hospitals. This is Paige. Paige is 6. When she was admitted to hospital, like all the children in Scotland now, she was given a What Matters to You poster to complete. And this is Paige's What Matters to You. It doesn't include, please give me my chemotherapy on time. That's not what they write. They write, I like it when the nurses are nice and friendly. I like it when my mum and dad get to stay with me. I like it when my ridiculously large Simba Teddy is with me all the time. And strangely for a 6-year-old, Paige also writes, I like it when the teacher comes. Slightly odd. We've also spread it not far from that children's hospital just down the road from here. We've also spread it to some care of the elderly units. And Geraldine Marsh, who's a senior nurse in that unit, started to use it for really confused and cognitively impaired adults. And one of those adults was a lady called Rose. Rose was in her late 80s. She had dementia. She was very confused, very agitated, got up from the bed a lot, fell over. So that's a very complex thing to deal with in a hospital ward. So you put the sides of the bed up, so you trap the patient in. You put a nurse beside the bed so that they have one-to-one nursing. That's a very complex thing to do in a very busy care of the elderly ward. Rose didn't get many visitors. She didn't have many family alive. But one day a niece came to visit. And that niece sat beside her, and one of the nurses had a What Matters to You conversation with her. And the niece said, well, it's a bit of a surprise that she doesn't have her rosary with her, because that's what matters to her. And they took the rosary out of the drawer, because it had been put in the drawer by the infection control police, keeping the place tidy. And they gave the rosary beads to Rose. And 2 things happened. The first thing that happened was that Rose calmed down. She didn't get up during the night. They could take the side of the beds down. She wasn't agitated anymore. They could move the nurse who had been one-to-one beside her, and everything was much, much calmer. She was much happier. But the second magic thing that happened was that people started to stop. So we put notices now above the beds where it says, what matters to me is my rosary beads. And people would stop and sit beside Rose, complete strangers. Other visitors for other families would come and sit and do her rosary with her. She had become a human being. We'd learned something about Rose rather than about the frail, elderly lady with dementia in the bed. So what would my What Matters to Me look like? So this is my 3-week stay in an acute hospital. This is what I would fill in if I put it above my bed. So I would want my family and friends to visit whenever I want, not when they wanted. You see this subtle difference? Some of them are here, so I should be slightly cautious. I want Wi-Fi available. I want my electronics available. I don't want you to keep anything from me, so I always want to be involved in the conversations. I want to stay connected to work. Oddly, I get more anxious if I'm not connected to this job I do, and maybe a little aspirational for the National Health Service. I'd like a cappuccino for breakfast and an espresso after dinner. So we can't promise everything, but we'll do our very best. So I wonder what What Matters to You would be. Well, could you take a moment, if you're a healthcare worker, a teacher, a social worker, an artist, somebody who works with others, maybe you're an entrepreneur with a company, could you take a moment to ask somebody, a user, a co-worker, somebody who works for you, what matters to them? It's started in health, we're now spreading it to education, to early years environments, other places. And it has begun to spread throughout the world. We now have 10 countries taking part in What Matters to You, from Brazil to Norway to Canada. And in Alaska, they've taken it enormously seriously. The most people-centered healthcare system in the world, would you believe, is in Alaska. It treats the native Alaskans. I had the privilege to visit it in June last year. Now, when I was introduced here, you heard I was Jason Leitch. I was the National Clinical Director of the Health Service. and I had this and that professionally. When you're in Alaska, that's not how you're introduced. You get taught to introduce yourself differently. So in Alaska, I'm Jason. I'm married to Lynn. My sister's called Vanessa. I've got a mum and dad called Jim and Irene who happen to be in Athens on a cruise today, which is making me slightly jealous. And I like the Boston Red Sox and going to the movies. When I'm at work, I'm the National Clinical Director of the National Health Service. Do you see the difference? Do you know me a little bit more than you knew me before? That's what matters to you is about. It's about compassion and care within our health system and our other systems. Let me take you back to Don. You heard that Don left the hospital, had his defibrillator inserted, did well. Well, the end of the story is that Don entered Scotland's 5-inch pot fuchsia competition. Well, who knew there even was one? And the wonderful news is that Don won it. And if there hadn't been a What Matters to You conversation with Don, he would probably have died. That's the importance of the What Matters to You conversation. Thank you very much for listening.
So thank you for joining today. I just want to, after watching the video, just come back, see if we can just close our eyes, even just for a moment, if we're able, or soft gaze. In your hand, maybe on our chest, on our heart. And feeling us breathe in. A couple breaths. Remembering what came up for us when we were doing the What Matters to Me. And sometimes keeping that in mind as we're moving through our day can help focus on what's really important. Okay. Thank you very much. I hope you have a lovely day. I hope your mind is at peace. Your heart is full of joy, and your words come from a place of love. Thank you.